During Hollywood's golden age, when looks were practically a passport to the spotlight, many famous actors chose a different path. Amidst the glitz and temptations of the industry, they didn't chase perfect beauty, but rather sought harmony, intelligence, and genuine affection. Values rarely seen in the film capital. While many stars paired with the beauty icons of their time, some big names surprised the public with their choices. Not because their loved ones were different, but because they proved that true love isn't bound by the standards of the silver screen. Although studios tried to build a perfect image for them in the public eye, time has shown that behind the glamour were genuine people, people willing to love in their own way. Let's explore 10 couples who once stunned Hollywood, where top stars chose love over image, proving that sometimes the heart is the most skillful director of any story. James Mason and Pamela Mason. When intellect transcended Hollywood beauty standards, James Mason embodied British cinematic elegance and depth. With his pensive gaze, captivating voice, and refined demeanor, he captivated audiences and many stars alike. At the height of his fame, Mason could have chosen any Hollywood beauty icon, but instead of a perfect muse, he chose Pamela Auster, who would later become Pamela Mason, surprising the film industry. Pamela didn't fit the beauty standards of the time. Her angular face, serious demeanor, and hairstyle and fashion sense were considered non-cinematic, making her a paradox in the glamorous world of Hollywood. One director even expressed skepticism upon meeting her. But Pamela possessed something Hollywood found difficult to control: sharp intellect, subtle wit, and an unyielding personality. She is a writer, screenwriter, and television host, always outspoken about the superficial values of the entertainment industry. In an era where many celebrity wives are encouraged to remain silent, Pamela chose to speak out. Her works not only tell stories, but also challenge the very concept of beauty. What makes them special is not just their differences, but the way they love amidst prejudice. Mason, a classic symbol of masculinity, doesn't hesitate to show respect and consideration for his wife. Images of him caring for Pamela at parties surprised, even bewildered many. In a patriarchal Hollywood, such behavior is rare. Pamela, with her sharp wit, is both admired and feared. One director once remarked that her appearance might be controversial, but after a few minutes of conversation, one is completely captivated by her intelligence. Their marriage lasted over 2 decades, from 1941 to 1964, produced 2 children, and became one of Hollywood's most intellectually significant relationships. When they divorced, the courtroom was described as a sharp debate, where Pamela captivated the entire courtroom with her arguments. Director Nicholas Ray once said, "James married the only woman in Hollywood who scared him more than himself." In a world where beauty was often the standard, James and Pamela Mason proved that intelligence, personality, and individuality are what create lasting appeal, more powerful than any physical standard. Anthony Quinn and Katherine DeMille, a marriage of power and ambition. Anthony Quinn was an icon of strong masculinity on the Hollywood screen. With his angular face, intense gaze, and confident demeanor, he represented the wild yet captivating man that audiences in the film industry loved. In the 1940s and 1950s, Quinn was not only an actor, but also the embodiment of rare authenticity and instinct. When he married Katherine DeMille, the adopted daughter of Cecil B. DeMille, Hollywood immediately took notice. This was not just a love story, but a convergence of 2 worlds. On one side, a man from humble origins, full of ambition. On the other, a woman who grew up in one of the most powerful families in the film industry. Katherine wasn't a dazzling beauty, but possessed a calm, intellectual, and discreet beauty. Growing up in the film industry, she understood the value of fame and the power of image. When he married Quinn, Many believed it was a strategic combination of talent and power. For Quinn, the marriage held even greater significance. As a Mexican-American actor, he had to overcome many prejudice barriers. Becoming the son-in-law of a powerful family allowed him to enter closed doors, solidifying his position in Hollywood. He not only had a wife, but also a strong foundation for his career. However, behind the glamour were inevitable cracks. As Quinn's career flourished, the distance between them became increasingly apparent. Katherine chose family life, raising their 5 children, while Quinn was drawn to fame and art. Rumors of extramarital affairs began to surface, further straining their marriage. Despite this, they remained together for nearly 3 decades, a rare feat in the industry. In 1965, they divorced when Quinn was at the peak of her career and no longer dependent on the DeMille family status. Despite the separation, they are still seen as a prime example of the combination of ambition and power. Quinn continued his brilliant career, winning 2 Oscars and becoming an international star, while Katherine chose a more private life, dedicating her time to her family. Their story is not just about marriage, but also reflects how Hollywood operates, a place where love, fame, and calculation are intertwined. There, a relationship is not just about emotion, but also about navigating a highly competitive world. And sometimes, the price of success is the inability to keep one's privacy intact. Peter Lorre emerged as one of the unforgettable faces of Hollywood's golden age, often embodying characters with dark, mysterious undertones that delved into the deepest recesses of the human psyche. His distinctive eyes and unmistakable voice helped engrave this image in the audience's memory. But behind the screen, his true self was more fragile and vulnerable than his cold exterior suggested. The woman who greatly influenced Lorre's career was Celia Lovski, an experienced actress, theater educator, and mentor. They met in Vienna, where she quickly recognized his exceptional potential and devoted herself to guiding and shaping his acting style. Their relationship began with mutual respect for the profession and developed into a lasting bond, where Celia's knowledge and discipline blended with Peter's unique acting instincts. Unlike many glamorous couples, their relationship is built on a foundation of work, intellect, and mutual support. When Lorre faced difficult times, including mental stress and drug dependence, Celia was always there, helping him maintain his career. She was involved in crucial decisions, from contract negotiations to maintaining professional discipline, and even prevented him from spiraling into crisis on several occasions. In the eyes of many, she was the silent force, keeping him from self-destructive. To the public, they are an enigmatic couple, an actor known for his solitary roles paired with a quiet, serious woman. But behind this contrast lies a profound artistic resonance. Promoters are also hesitant to tell their story as they don't fit the typical romantic stereotype. Instead, they choose to work together, building value from their abilities and mutual respect. Although they didn't stay together until the end of their lives, Celia's influence on Lorre remained profound throughout his career. From her deeply nuanced performances to his serious approach to the craft. Even as their personal lives changed, they maintained their professional connection and mutual respect. The story of Peter Lorre and Celia Lovski shows that amidst the glitz and glamour of cinema, relationships based on intellect, dedication, and trust still exist. Their story isn't something easily summed up in a few headlines, but rather a testament to a deep connection where art is nurtured by responsibility and genuine companionship. George C. Scott was never the ideal Hollywood look. He didn't possess the perfect cinematic face, the captivating smile, or the dashing charm often seen in leading men. Instead, he had an intense energy, a sharp mind, and an ability to immerse himself in his roles, making audiences forget they were watching a performance. Scott once described his face as like a clenched fist, and indeed, each of his roles carried a rare tension, intensity, and depth. As for Colleen Dewhurst, his co-star and wife, Hollywood also struggled to categorize her. She wasn't the type of woman who would be the center of attention. Dewhurst possessed a strong face, a serious gaze, a resonant voice, and a demeanor more suited to theater than film. Critics once called her a captivatingly unconventional beauty, a comment that was both ironic and an acknowledgement of her talent. She didn't need beauty to make an impression. When George C. Scott and Colleen Dewhurst came together, they weren't a fairy tale couple. They were two artistic personalities, fierce, stubborn, and always seeking truth in art. They married in 1960, divorced in 1965, reunited 2 years later, and then separated again in 1972. Their relationship was like an unfinished play, full of emotions, arguments, and intense clashes. Many say that every time they disagreed, the entire set shook. But it was precisely this conflict that fueled their powerful creativity. Unlike many Hollywood couples, Scott and Dewhurst never tried to build a perfect image. They didn't embellish their private lives, didn't chase glamour, but lived true to themselves. They were genuine artists, passionate about their work, immersed in their roles, and disdainful of the superficialities of the entertainment industry. One critic once remarked that they were as hard as granite, yet more energetic than many young stars combined. Their relationship wasn't smooth, but it was rarely genuine. They weren't seeking beauty, but understanding. Both understood the artist's loneliness, the joy of reaching the pinnacle of acting, and the pain of being misunderstood. In a world where marriage is sometimes a tool, they proved that there are still people who choose to live authentically, even at a cost. After their final breakup, Colleen Dewhurst said, "George and I have a lot in common. We love acting, we love being together, and we both can't stand people who are beautiful, but empty." That statement wasn't just about them, but also a blunt critique of Hollywood's superficial glamour. The story of George C. Scott and Colleen Dewhurst is not a fairy tale, but a journey of two artists who dared to love, dared to confront, and dared to live authentically in a world full of pretense. They may not be the most beautiful couple, but they are certainly one of the most genuine and memorable. Humphrey Bogart and Mayo Method. One of Hollywood's most fierce marriages. Before Lauren Bacall appeared and became an icon of romantic film love stories, Humphrey Bogart spent many years in a tumultuous relationship with Mayo Method. It wasn't just love, but a whirlwind of emotions where two strong personalities constantly clashed, creating an irresistible attraction. Bogart, with his cool demeanor and calm bearing, was the epitome of a classic, mysterious man. Conversely, Mayo Method was an intelligent, sharp, and independent woman who refused to be subservient to anyone. This very contrast and similarity drew them together, but also sowed the seeds of endless conflict. Their love began with passion, but quickly transformed into a tense internal struggle. Both were strong, both wanted control, making their life together as dramatic as a film noir, a genre synonymous with Bogart's name. Hollywood then called them the Battling Bogarts, not sarcastically, but to describe how they loved and argued with the same intense passion. Film studios constantly struggled to maintain Bogart's public image. Warner Brothers tried to prevent his private life from overshadowing his burgeoning career, but every time they appeared together, the press scrutinized every moment. Behind the sensational headlines were two real people, hurt, jealous, yet bound by deep, inexplicable emotions. Ultimately, the relationship broke down not because love faded, but because of irreparable cracks. The separation closed a turbulent period in Bogart's life. When he met Lauren Bacall, Hollywood breathed a sigh of relief, opening a gentler chapter. But the old story remained an indelible mark. The marriage between Humphrey Bogart and Mayo was not just a private matter, but also reflected an era where love, fame, and ego clashed violently. It showed that behind the cool exterior of screen icons, there were still vulnerable hearts. And sometimes it was these stormy relationships that made them more authentic. Ernest Borgnine and Donna Rancourt. When Hollywood witnessed a true love, Ernest Borgnine was never the typical Hollywood Prince Charming. He had a rugged face, a gentle but imperfect smile, and a more approachable rather than flashy demeanor. Therefore, his 1955 Oscar win for his role in Marty became a special milestone, a rare instance where Hollywood celebrated simplicity, sincerity, and inner depth instead of outward appearance. Borgnine became proof that talent and heart can transcend all stereotypes. Before finding lasting happiness, he had experienced several unsuccessful marriages, including a whirlwind 32-day marriage to Ethel Merman. It seemed he hadn't yet met someone who truly understood the gentle person behind his tough exterior, until Donna Rancourt appeared. Donna wasn't from the entertainment industry, nor was she a star. She lived a simple life, away from the spotlight. And that's what captivated Borgnine. In a Hollywood that worships perfection, he chose sincerity, warmth, and a true life partner. They came together, staying together for over 4 decades, overcoming all gossip and skepticism. At the time, many were surprised that an Oscar-winning actor would marry a woman who was outside the Hollywood mold. But over the years, they became a rare example of a lasting marriage in a glamorous world. In their final photographs, they appeared together naturally, without hiding their age, simply 2 people who had spent nearly half a century together in peace. Their story shows that happiness doesn't lie in the spotlight or praise. Sometimes, the simplest things last the longest. Ernest Borgnine, once considered not up to Hollywood standards, had the most fulfilling ending, not on screen, but in real life, where he found the person who made him smile genuinely because of love. Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester. Hollywood's Quasimodo paradox. Charles Laughton was one of the most unique actors of the Golden Age. With his angular face, piercing eyes, and ability to transform emotions in an instant, he was often chosen for roles that were more profound than his appearance. When he embodied Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Laughton touched the hearts of the audience with the kindness hidden beneath the heavy makeup, a role that was both painful and noble, reflecting a part of his true self. His partner was Elsa Lanchester, a British actress with a bold personality and unconventional style. She made a strong impression with her role in The Bride of Frankenstein, with her spiky hair and unforgettable strange aura. Elsa didn't possess classic beauty, but had a unique charm that captivated the public. When they married, Hollywood was both surprised and curious. This wasn't the ideal couple by conventional standards, but rather 2 artistic souls who found each other in their own unique worlds. Their relationship was actually more complex than it appeared. Laughton was reserved, harboring many unspoken feelings in the context of the era, while Elsa was straightforward and open. They were bound together not only by affection, but by respect, empathy, and companionship, a kind of connection that transcended conventional romantic stereotypes. In the pressure-filled and prejudiced environment of Hollywood, this was both realistic and admirable. Initially, studios struggled to portray this couple. Instead of forcing them into the perfect match standard, they chose to celebrate their differences, their intellect, personality, and talent. Gradually, Laughton and Lanchester became symbols of a different kind of beauty, not in appearance, but in artistic depth. They worked together, grew together, and turned their differences into advantages. Their marriage lasted over 3 decades, from 1929 until Laughton's death in 1962. It wasn't a fairy tale, but a bond built on trust and understanding. Later in her memoirs, Elsa subtly alluded to their private agreement, and when asked about the rumors, she simply smiled. Charles and I had a perfect marriage. We never argued, and we didn't need to prove anything. That statement, both gentle and profound, reflects a different kind of love amidst the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Unpretentious, not chasing standards, but enduring and sincere. Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester proved that in a world that values appearances, a connection of souls is what truly matters. Wallace Beery and Rita Gilman, the grumpy man and the simple woman. Wallace Beery was a familiar face in Hollywood's golden age, famous for his roles as the grumpy but kind man. Audiences loved him for films like The Champ and Min and Bill, where he displayed warmth hidden beneath his rough exterior. But in real life, Beery was a complex man, hot-tempered, blunt, and difficult to deal with, to the point of being considered one of Hollywood's most difficult stars to work with. In 1924, he married Rita Gilman, a woman completely outside the entertainment industry, discreet and unfamiliar with the spotlight. This marriage surprised many. While actors often choose partners who are famous or beneficial to their image, Beery chose someone simple and unassuming. Rita appeared alongside her husband with a rustic charm, even being described as a small-town girl who wandered into Hollywood. It's noteworthy that MGM didn't try to build Rita's image as usual. They were almost completely silent, not making her part of their promotional strategy. Perhaps they understood that life with Wallace Beery was already challenging enough without the added pressure from the media. The marriage lasted 15 years, a rare length in the volatile industry. However, behind it all were simmering conflicts. Beery, with his tough personality and large ego, was considered to lack tact in his treatment of Rita, while Rita seemed unable to find her true place in his world. When they divorced in 1939, she accused her ex-husband of coldness and emotional distress, especially when he often compared her to his beautiful co-stars. The divorce was not just a private matter, but also reflected the gap between the glamour and reality. Rita, an ordinary woman, represents the people behind the spotlight, while Beery shows that fame can sometimes obscure the very real human side of a star. Despite the imperfect ending, their story remains a memorable slice of Hollywood, where relationships are rarely perfect and even the strongest can be vulnerable when they step away from the screen. Mickey Rooney's journey is one of Hollywood's strangest and most poignant stories. From a beloved child star, a symbol of brightness and success, he gradually faded from the spotlight, becoming an aging figure, more famous for his impulsive personality and complicated marriages than for his talent. If his career reflects the fading of fame, his love life illustrates the harsh reality of Hollywood. When the spotlight fades, so does his allure. Rooney married 8 times, and that journey alone is a long story of the changes brought about by time and by himself. His first marriage to Ava Gardner, one of the most dazzling beauty icons on screen, was a glamorous beginning. But that relationship quickly ended, and since then, each subsequent marriage seems to reflect a decline, not only emotionally, but also in his public image. When Rooney married Jan Chamberlain in 1978, the image of the child prodigy he once was had almost vanished. He had aged, become shorter, and his once lively face had become gaunt and marked by time. Chamberlain, his last wife, was not a movie star, nor did she possess cinematic beauty, and was often described unfavorably by the press. The comparison between her and Ava Gardner, between a beauty icon and an ordinary woman, illustrates just how demanding Hollywood is of its image. One journalist once quipped that if Rooney's marriages were ranked chronologically, it would be the saddest downward curve. From the heights of glamour, to the end of ordinariness. That comment may be harsh, but it reflects how the industry judges people by their appearance and fame rather than their true feelings. However, what is rarely mentioned is that his marriage to Chamberlain was Rooney's longest and most enduring relationship. While his previous marriages ended quickly, this last one lasted until his death in 2014. No more spotlights, no more red carpets or lavish parties. He finally found what he had lacked his whole life: peace. No more staged images, no more media strategies. Mickey and Jan lived simply, quietly, sometimes almost forgotten. They were no longer icons, but just two people growing old together, sharing their final years in solitude. And perhaps it was then that Mickey Rooney, who once had it all, truly understood the value of genuine commitment. The story of Rooney and Chamberlain, ultimately, is a typical slice of Hollywood, where beauty can open the door to fame, but cannot hold on to love or youth forever. When the glamour fades, all that remains are ordinary people, trying to love each other in a world that once made them legends. Hollywood has always been fascinated by legendary love stories, and few have been told as often as the relationship between Spencer Tracy and Katherine Hepburn. Two big stars, two kindred spirits, and a love affair that lasted for decades. That's the image the public is familiar with. But behind that story lies a real person. Louise Treadwell, Tracy's legal wife, was almost completely erased from public memory by the studio system to maintain his perfect image. With his resolute face and an authentic acting style, Spencer Tracy was an icon of masculinity and morality that Hollywood celebrated. As a valuable asset to MGM, his image was tightly controlled. Such a star could not be associated with an inappropriate private life, and thus Louise Treadwell, whom he married in 1923 when both were unknown, was gradually pushed out of the spotlight, becoming a name rarely mentioned. The contrast between Treadwell and Katherine Hepburn is striking. Hepburn was the epitome of intelligence, freedom, and charisma, while Treadwell was reserved, calm, and rarely appeared in public, partly due to her hearing impairment. This quiet demeanor made her even more vulnerable to Hollywood, portraying her as invisible, unsuitable for the story they wanted to tell. In reality, Tracy and Treadwell's marriage was largely nominal. They had 2 children, and the loss of their first son's hearing impairment widened the gap between them. While Tracy struggled internally, Treadwell transformed her difficulties into motivation, dedicating her life to supporting and fundraising for deaf children. Despite living separately, she quietly used resources from her husband's career to pursue this mission. Meanwhile, MGM employed a sophisticated image strategy. Instead of acknowledging the marriage, they cultivated Tracy's image as a private and discreet individual. Louise Treadwell's name gradually faded from the press, publicity, and the public eye, as if she had never existed. Even when she appeared at her husband's funeral, many didn't recognize her. This story is not just a personal tragedy, but also reflects how Hollywood operates. To maintain the legend of Spencer Tracy and Katherine Hepburn, the real wife was sidelined. As one industry insider admitted, they weren't just promoting the film, but also creating an image. And in that image, there was no place for a simple woman living outside the spotlight. Louise Treadwell continued her quiet life, dedicating herself to the deaf community, a legacy she truly left behind. Meanwhile, Hollywood continued to tell the Tracy Hepburn story as a romantic icon. But behind every legend there is a price, and here it was the oblivion of a real person, so that the silver screen dream could continue to exist. These 10 extraordinary marriages expose a truth behind the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, where beauty is not just an advantage, but a money that dominates both the careers and personal lives of stars. In that world, love is not simply an emotion, but a strategic choice. And it is in these relationships that transcend physical appearance that we see the weight of image value, something that can support, shape, and even hurt people behind the screen. Observing these couples closely, a pattern gradually emerges. For rising young actors like Anthony Quinn, marriage is sometimes a wise move to expand opportunities, build status, and get closer to fame, regardless of emotional factors. Conversely, stars who have passed the peak of their fame seek more stable relationships, where understanding and soul connection are more important than perfect looks. There are also cases like Peter Lorre or Charles Laughton, artists with a European mindset, less bound by beauty standards. They seek intellectual connection, empathy, and respect for their profession and their partners. In an industry that prioritizes appearance, these marriages serve as a silent counter-argument. That depth of soul sometimes holds a more enduring appeal than any painted beauty. Remarkably, these relationships, once considered mismatched, often last longer than the perfect romances portrayed in the media. Charles Laughton and Elsa Lanchester, Ernest Borgnine and Tova Tresnes, Peter Lorre and Celia Lovski, Rooney and Jan Chamberlain, all chose to commit to long-term relationships in an environment known for its constant change. This resilience speaks volumes more than any promise. However, Hollywood's image machine is not so quick to accept this reality. Film studios seek to conceal partners who don't meet their standards, restricting their public appearances, editing their photos, even removing them from public profiles. The goal is clear: to maintain the illusion that stars only associate with perfect role models. This control gradually shapes how the public perceives love, turning real relationships, full of conflict, compromise, but also genuine, into edited stories. But looking deeper into these marriages reveals a different Hollywood, one where power, talent, understanding, and the need for companionship can transcend all beauty standards. These stories are not only interesting exceptions, but also a reminder. Behind every perfect image and every love legend are real people. People who have to love, choose, and sometimes compromise in a world that constantly demands they become icons rather than themselves. Thank you everyone for watching the video. These stories show that behind the Hollywood glamour lies a complex world of power, love, and ambition. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support me.